Oh, well now, g'day to you friends. Seamus here. Thank you for visiting today. We've not been together here for more than a year, and I'm terribly sorry for that, but hopefully today will be the start of a new chapter in our story sharing together, and I do thank you again for visiting. Today we're going to share a very simple story inspired by the great fables of Aesop. This is a wonderful story about the great and strong learning from those that are lesser and weaker. It's called simply The Lion and the Mouse. Let's just get started, shall we? It came to pass many generations ago that on the great and open savannas of Central Africa there was a mighty and fierce and powerful lion, and he loved the life that he led. He had a large family that he was responsible for, and they lived on the savanna very wisely between the grasslands and the scrublands. So they always had a vast plain to hunt on, but there was also lots of fine shady spots for sleeping because, as we know, friend lion does like a nice nap now and then. Well, on this particular day, his family had had much success in hunting, and King Lion had a nice full belly, and he found himself one of his favorite shady places at the edge of the gorselands. There was high shrubbery, and there was a few tall trees that cast a nice patch of shade where he could lay down in the soft sand. And he put himself down that day, and he had a nice little nap, and he settled into the sand, and he closed his eyes, and his tail waved happily, and soon enough the eyes drooped, and the breathing slowed, and King Lion slipped happily into sleep. And within a moment or two later, of course, as any happy lion would do, he began to snore, that deep, low in the chest, rumbly kind of a snore. Well, just a moment or so later, soon after the snoring started, who came along through the shrublands but a family of mice? There was a papa mouse and a mama mouse and 3 or 4 little mouselings, I guess you would call them, and they too found the day especially warm. It was very hot, the sun was high in the sky, and they were looking for a shady place to have a nap as well. And as they came around a rock, what did they see but this horrible, terrifying lion, except that he was sound asleep. At first, Mama Mouse was like, "We can't possibly stay here. That's a lion. He'll eat us. He'll gobble us up. It'll be 3 bites and the whole family will be gone." And Papa Mouse thought, he said, "But you know, if we sleep close to the lion, nothing would dare bother us." So they gathered the family up in a little cleft of a rock close to the lion's tail, and they settled in for a bit of a rest. And all went well. But except, of course, for the little mouselings, because if you've ever been a parent or grandparent or auntie or uncle, you know that sometimes children don't nap as long as we wish that they would. And long before their parents were ready to wake up, the little mouselings began to wake up. And of course, in their waking, they wanted to play. And in their playing, they thought it would be great fun to run up and down the tail of King Lion. And it only took a few moments of that for King Lion to begin to come out of his slumber. And Papa Mouse woke up just as he felt that first tremble of the lion coming to consciousness. And opening his eyes, he could see his young running up and down the trail, and he called to Mama Mouse, and up he went that tail, and he began to grab the little mice babies and throw them down to Mama, and grab the next one and throw it down to Mama. And he had just secured the safety of the last little mouseling up near the very edge of the lion's mane. And he grabbed that last mouseling and flipped it down onto the sand to where Mama was, and just as he did that, up from the ground came King Lion with a terrifying roar, and that front paw came up and trapped Papa Mouse against the back of his mane. King Lion took that mouse by the tail and brought him around in front of his face and said, "Little gnat, little flea, why ever should I just not gobble you up for a snack? I ate well this morning, but I have room for you." Papa Mouse looked at the lion. He said, "Oh, great and mighty king, magnificent beast that rules these plains, please spare me, spare my family. My children meant no harm. They were simply playing." And the lion looked at the mouse and said, "Why ever should I spare you? You are a great irritant, and you've disturbed my sleep. I do believe that I will just eat you for a snack." And the mouse said, "Sir, please, bear in mind that perhaps someday if you do this kindness for me, myself and my family, we may be able to return a kindness to you." King Lion thought for only a moment, and he said, "What service could a tiny little ant like you possibly do for a magnificent beast like me? What use do I have for a mouse?" Papa Mouse thought for a moment, and he said, "Well, Your Majesty, you're quite large, quite big, quite powerful, but there may come a time where you need someone that can get into small places, and that I certainly can do. And if you'll spare us, we will always strive to serve you." And the lion thought for a moment and turned Papa Mouse loose, and off they went. And King Lion went back to sleep. Well, the days passed and the week passed and life continued for King Lion out in the broad savannah between the grasslands and the shrublands, and he had his favorite places to rest. But one day he was looking for a particular comfortable nap again, and he went to that same favorite spot. But what he did not know is that man had come into the territory. A large group of hunters and poachers looking for the most valuable prize of all, the well-cared-for pelt of a magnificent male lion. And they had done their tracking and done their stalking. They found that some particular large male loved this particular shady spot between two tall trees in the shrublands. And they set a trap. They laid a net down in the sand. They covered it up with more sand. They laid a spring rope up to one of the tall trees that they had bent down low. And thinking that they would wait for the lion to make his noise, they drew themselves away. And later that day along came King Lion to his favorite spot, and he laid himself down in the shade and settled into the sand, and soon the eyes were closed and the rumbling of a happy snore started. And it was then that one of the hunters came out of his hide and took a large sharp machete and hacked at the rope and sprang the trap, and up into the air went King Lion, dangling so high above the sand that even the very tippy tip of his tail could not touch the sand. The hunters, being wise enough in their craft, knew there was no need to take the lion now. They could just leave him swinging there for a few days until hunger began to weaken him, and they left. Well, in being sprung up into the trap, King Lion had been rendered quite unconscious for a moment. And as he came to, he realized the situation, and he got very angry, and he gave a mighty roar. But of course, his family had made their way across the savannah to their nighttime rest place, and he was all alone. But who would come to his rescue but this squeaking little voice down at the ground? And when King Lion wiggled himself around and looked down at the ground, who should be there but Papa Mouse? And he said, "King Lion, I see that you are in a very difficult position. May I be of some service?" And the lion said, "What could you possibly do for me?" He says, "You're so small. I've been taken by man, the greatest of my enemies. What could you possibly do?" And Papa Mouse said, "There's nothing I could do by myself, Your Majesty, but with the help of my friends and family, we may be of some service." And Mr. Mouse began to squeak and snip and snack and make all of his little mousy noises, and all of his Mama Mouse and his little mousings and all of the mouseling cousins and aunties and uncles came out from all the clefts in the rock where they were hiding. And very quickly, Mama and Papa Mousey went up the tree and began to nibble, 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 nibble at that rope until the net fell to the ground. And now at least King Lion was no longer swinging in the air, but he was on the ground. And all those many hundreds of mousies now attacked the net, and they chewed and bit and chewed and bit and chewed and bit until they cut through that ropes, and King Lion was free. And he lowered himself down to the ground so he could look Papa Mousey directly in the eye, and he says, "You have taught me a valuable lesson today, friend. I, who find myself great and powerful and mighty, have been spared an untimely end by something that is amongst the smallest of my kingdom. I will remember your service, good mouse, and that of your family for so ever long as I live." And that family for the rest of time was always safe in the midst of that pride of lions. They always had a comfortable place to sleep, and knowing that they were safe from any predator that could trouble them. King Lion learned the valuable lesson that day that those smaller and weaker were not necessarily less valuable. And although this is not a fairy tale, I am delighted to say that King Lion and Papa Mouse and Mama Mouse and all the little mouselings lived happily ever after. I do thank you for your patience, friends. I'm a bit rusty. I hope you enjoyed the story. Feel free to share the link with your friends. It helps a lot. I just want to thank you all for coming back and visiting again, and we will see you very soon. Until then, take good care of yourselves and of each other. Cheers.